What's up, boys and girls? Lambo here, and today I will show you guys my very first Zerg Academy video. This will be a series where I will explain you guys how to improve certain things that I see casual or more casual players are doing wrong with this game. I think these videos will be aimed mostly at players from bronze to diamond level, although I believe in some of them there's also going to be important information for masters players. That I still see masters player doing a lot of the stuff wrong that I will talk about in these videos. Either way, today I'm gonna talk about how you guys improve the fastest, because one of the most commonly asked questions in my Twitch chat is, let's say for example someone asked me, hey, I am in Diamond 1 already for months and I just can't seem to get past that level. I can't get promoted to masters. What should I do to improve? And I usually always give them the same answer. This also goes for people that are on a lower level and just start out playing, and then they're like, hey, how should I improve? And very often people in Twitch chat tell them, hey, until this and this league, all you need to do is learn to macro, and then in this league you need to learn to micro, and in this league you need to learn I don't know, like multitasking or something. I don't think it's quite as simple as that. And what I usually tell people, even though I think this advice in general has some merits, obviously, usually what I tell people is the most effective way of training, if you're aiming at getting better eventually, and not just winning MMR, because in that case you should just learn random all-in, one for each matchup. I think that won't bring you the most joy out of StarCraft, even though your MMR will go up higher no matter which race you're playing. The way I think it works for every race, what you guys should do is learn to improve your fundamentals, and learn to improve your fundamentals one by one, and try to fix your problem areas that way. Now, I know even Master League players and low GM players, when I watch their replays, they still do they still don't have perfect injects, they still get supply blocked all the time, they still don't have perfect creep spread. So this is something that I think goes for every level, where you should just focus on your things one at a time. And I will just tell you guys the order of importance and the order of things that I would tell you guys how to do it. So practically it would look like that, where you would just, for a couple of days, straight up focus on one thing. So let's say injecting. So you think your injects are weak, you see you're floating a lot of money on your queens. So for the next couple of days, you would just focus on injecting your hatchery the moment you have the energy. So one thing that I actually saw Maynard do, I'm not sure if he's still doing that, but a long time ago I tuned into Maynard's stream, and he had a challenge where he would just focus on not getting supply blocked, but also not making too many depots at a time. I think making challenges like that for yourself help you a lot, and it's basically the same principle as what I'm explaining right now, where you try to focus on one thing at a time. So even though this might not help you win games right away, this will make you better in the long run. So you would, for 3 days straight, focus on just hitting your injects. So you will constantly look at the time, or you would constantly check your hatcheries, and always try to inject the moment the queens have the energy to do so. Preferably when the queens also are synced up, so it doesn't waste too much time. But you will notice that you won't spend as much time on anything else, so you will probably lose a bunch of games to all-ins or to anything else, because you're obviously not scouting, you're not focusing on your creep spread, you're not focusing on your army movement, you're spending a lot more time of completely focusing just on your queens hitting the injects. But all of these fundamentals and all of these mechanics will become automatic, and I think you can build your own rhythm with it as well. Every player, you guys know that we spam stuff at the start, but every player has their own little rhythm in which they do stuff, and I will show you guys that later. So the way I would go about it would be to first learn how to inject, because I think like pretty much all players below Masters League do not inject properly yet. So doing that first for a couple of days. Then the next thing that's very important, that is obviously the natural follow-up to hitting your injects, would be to learn how to keep your money low and spend your larva the moment you have it. So a lot of times, even in, as I said, Master League replays that I get sent in, I have people waiting for scouting information to spend their larva, and they just end up floating money, and then they end up making drones too late, or they make up army too late. And either way, I just want you to spend your money and spend your larva. Like at the moment you start floating money, you see if you can spend it on queens plus production, like extra queens plus production. If not, you can just take extra hatcheries, macro hatcheries, or expansions, depending on where you're in the game, where you're at in the game. And this way you just try to keep your money low. And what this is very important for, like as I said before, people don't spend their money, and you might think, but what if, because right now we're still not focusing at the scouting, right? The inject should still be on, you should still be on top of it, obviously, but now you're not scouting, and you're like, but what if my opponent is? Then you might lose a game or two because of it. But most games are lost that I watch because people don't actually make enough drones. So even if you make too much army at first, you can use it for run-bys or threatening attacks. So making army too early is not that terrible. Making drones too early very rarely is bad, unless you're being all in by something very precise. Usually, I think, especially on the more casual level, you can see your opponent attacking, and then as long as you made drones consistently and you're spending your money, you can reactively make units, maybe a couple of spines, and be fine against most attacks. So spending your money would be the next thing I would focus on. Again, you guys can set your own rules. Never let the money go above 400 minerals and, I don't know, 200 gas or whatever. You can also make them a little bit easier for yourselves, but I think keeping yourself honest is very important. Then the next thing that rounds up all the Zerg mechanics would be to spread creep. Now, this is something that is pretty high level, honestly, because it requires a lot of time, especially if you don't have good mouse precision. But I think learning how to creep spread properly and always taking the time and focusing on it for a couple of days will help everyone immensely. Especially, I also suggest everyone to make it rather a little bit slower and then have the creep tumors placed accurately at the edge of the creep, because eventually you will get faster at that and it will help you. It will help you out. So that would be the next one. Then the next step would be making overlords at the right time. And just focusing on not getting supply blocked, because if you actually just spend your money but you get supply blocked all the time, that just means you're making extra hatcheries or you're having extra queens in the queue, so that doesn't really help you. So making overlords at the right time kind of rounds out the entire macro process. And then the next thing I would go to would be learning actual build orders and learning how the Zerg economy works. You can do this by just copying what pro gamers play. The openers are usually always the same, like hatch, gas, pool, and then we pull 2 drones off gas. Like in pretty much every match, we pull some drones off gas, and then we take a third hatch at 30. And then you can look at when do Zerg players really take their gases. For example, I would say 9 out of 10 players below masters, and this is completely made up, this statistic, but just by guessing from the replays that I saw, are taking their gases on drone counts that are too low. So they're taking their gases too early, they take up too early. Usually the main goal of Zerg is to get the 3 mineral lines saturated as early as possible, because Zerg is the race that can take the 3 bases as early as possible, even in ZVZ, unless you're opening with 2 base. That should usually be your goal at the end of the day. And now there are some builds that make that more complicated, for example, like if you're being glaive attacked or something, but learning an actual build order and focusing on that for a couple of days, I think, is great. You can, as I said, just do that on the ladder, and you will lose some games at first because you will just do mistakes. But again, eventually these build orders, and I would just suggest 1 build order per matchup, will become automatic and you won't have to focus on them. And the moment you won't have to focus on these specifics one by one, everything else will also come back, and you will start hitting your injects, and you can start making space for your mind to think about the actual game of StarCraft. Like once everything else becomes automatic, this is where the game truly becomes beautiful, where you start thinking about, okay, where is the army of my opponent? What could I set up next? What strategic decisions would be smart now? Where to send up the army? That kind of stuff. So then the next step would be learning how to micro properly, and the biggest part of micro as Zerg is to set up engagements properly. So force yourself to always, before you engage, have a surround, or at least come from 2 sides. And don't just come in with a blob and then lose everything to Widow Mines. Force yourself to split up your army before you run in. so you can focus on that for a couple of days. Then the next one would be map vision, something that I see rarely being done correctly, even on very high levels, where you want to have always a Zergling in front of your opponent's base exits against Terran or Protoss, and you will always want to have Overlords spread around the edges to see drops coming, Liberators coming. In ZVZ, that will mostly be just Overlords. Obviously, since Zerg doesn't really have a mobile entire unit besides the Queen, which isn't really that mobile, so just having Overlords and positions. And then the last step, which will... yeah, I think this is the last one that I thought of, would be scouting. So actually try to get scouting information, and then obviously you will learn how to react little by little, but that's not stuff that you need to focus on. But first you have to always do scouting, and maybe eventually something that I could also add would be, this is already on higher level, so it would be to always just force yourself to run by, to have an army on the map, because one of the big advantages that Zerg has is that our armies are very fast. So we can have an army on the other side of the map, force your opponents to also have an army at home, otherwise they will lose their economy. And then once you realize, okay, they left a bunch of stuff at home, you can come back and come in with a surround maybe, or just have more units in the actual fight. So having run-bys theoretically for Zerg is always good. It's just a matter of, do you have the time to set up run-bys and look at them? So that would be the last thing. And I think you should focus on these things one by one. Either way, let's get back to the Zerg rhythm thing and how you guys can practice that. All right, so what I wanted to show you guys is something that is going to be very similar to a very old Day 9 daily that I still remember from back when I was a gold player, and I learned all of those things. Where Day 9, I think he hosted the same map, which was also the Kivikaki versus Stefano game. I think it's Shattered Temple. And he would basically explain how to always do the same follow-up of different keystrokes. So, for example, let's say you're playing grid and you would always go, as a Terran player, you would go 1, Q, E, 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 and then, I don't know, 2 for the command center, and then Q to build SCVs, and then that sort of stuff. And what I want to explain right now is basically just a little bit of how the rhythm works. You guys can also practice it like this. Just go into a custom game without an opponent. I made it with AI, so I can go from replay here, because I tried filming this at first with a real build order, but I kept putting the creep tumors down on cooldown, which was not exactly what I wanted to show, just out of pure habit and playing an actual build. So what I'm going to do now here is to just completely focus on explaining the rhythm part and how my rhythm looks and how you guys can use that as well. So the reason why Zerg can have such a rhythm, or I at least call it a rhythm, is because there's a certain flow of things which always repeats. As Zerg, you always inject, and that's where, for me, the cycle starts. And then right after, because an inject takes 29 seconds, you can spread your creep tumors. A creep tumor, putting it down, takes 11 seconds, and then it takes 11 more seconds to come off cooldown, but it also takes some time to spread. And then, for me personally, in between that, I already make units, and I will show this later on, but you guys can do it in the following. You inject, and then you put down creep tumors. While you're putting down creep tumors, you naturally look at the minimap, because that's how you move, and then you force yourself to look at the top right every once in a while to check how much money do I have, and am I supply blocked soon? So that's part of what you should always do. And then what happens afterwards should be like managing your economy. So seeing if you have your drones in the gas, or if you have more than 16 drones somewhere, maybe scouting, maybe moving your army around, maybe spreading overlords, maybe spreading zerglings, doing all that stuff. So the faster and the more solid you become at the injecting part, and plus creep spread plus everything else, the more time you have to do all the other things. And that's what I wanted to show here. So I just basically mined some minerals, got 4 hatcheries. If you guys are wondering how I'm doing my injects, it's with the screen hotkeys. So I screen hotkey at the very start of the game, and then I jump. I explained this as well in one of my videos. So this is where the cycle starts. I'm gonna wait till the creep queens are out, and I have those hotkeys as well. So let's say we inject. inject, 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 inject. The next thing we do is we put down creep tumors. So creep, 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 creep. And now we're building units. While this is going on, like while I'm moving here, I'm forcing myself to look at the top right as well to see if we have money to spend. So that was one cycle of macro mechanics. So now we have time to look at the other side of the map, take some gases because we need gases to tech up. Okay, we need some more overlords to not be supply blocked, right? One little trick is that you should always keep the same order in which you spread the creep tumors. That makes it a little bit easier for me. So once again we inject, and then again we spread creep. The creep queens will also get 25 energy, so you can put down extra tumors. Always make sure to put them on the very edge. Now we spend our money. The more advanced you get, you can do the spending money part in between. And now I'm like, okay, he has some marines, I need some zerglings, right? And I need some overlords. We can move our army in position. So let's say Israelis are here, I'm moving all my creep queens here. And now the next cycle begins because the injects popped. So we do the same again. We spread the creep tumors. And the main base we don't need anymore. And that's the next one done. We make some units. We're like, okay, now we need zergling speed. We add some extra tech. We have too many drones here, so now this gets rallied here. We rally these bases here, this one here, this one here. And then we take extra gases here. Some more overlords to not get supply blocked, right? And he killed our overlord. Oh, damn it. So he has an air unit, so maybe let's make some spores. And now, next inject cycle. And next creep cycle. And then, the better you get at that, the more time you have for everything else, as I explained before. Right? So, and now again, we produce units. I think I am already producing units in between. Just out of it's in my blood to do that. So, now we're like, okay, we're floating money, we need extra bases. Let's scout a little bit still, let's get overlord speed, upgrades, right? We have 15 out of 16 here, that's what I saw. Inject again, and now another lane of creep tumors. And you can do this while spending your money. You can also do this on multitasking trainers where they start attacking you, or you need to consistently move around with links. But basically, you should do that in actual games as well. Where you do this, you inject, and then you spread the creep. The way you see, by the way, if an inject is, you can also just every now and again check your bases to see if it's done, right? So now it's done, now we inject, and now we do the creep spread again. We could have, with the time that we had before, set up something here to check the high ground. We can attack the rocks. Meanwhile, and now we again spend our money. No, we didn't have this yet. And now we realize, okay, we still have some time, let's spread some overlords. You know, very fast. And now we have some map vision, which is great, and now we can inject again. So inject, 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 inject. We don't have the drones and gas here, so let's rally those there. Now let's saturate this base, now maybe let's scout. You can also force yourself to like constantly run around in circles like that. Like either way you do it, I think this is a nice little warm-up. But this, just getting used to this cycle of always doing the stuff in the same order, I think helps a lot. Make time for something else, like a Morphin Overseer. Like that's just stuff that you do during the game. So if you get fast that, okay, I'm doing my injects, then I'm doing my creep spread always, and while I'm doing that, I'm looking at the top right, you will get a lot better. So that's just what I wanted to showcase real quick. After you're done, it's always down to priorities. So usually a big priority should be to manage your economy properly. And then another big priority should be, for example, scouting. Or against Terran, always looking at the minimap to try and mirror the Hellion movements with your queens. So once again, the injects popped, we also heard it. And we again go from the left side to the right side. And I didn't even do the best job ever of spreading creep, but already we have more than half the map covered. Now that that's over, we can look at our Zergling. And usually what you should do in-game is not constantly run around. Rather have like a link for scouting close to your opponent's base, and then after you're done with your cycle, that's where you jump in, because now you have time, right? We're like, okay, we don't need to inject right now, we don't need to creep spread. We're like, okay, what does he have? What does he have? Okay, his army is not here, so he must be attacking us right now. So we rally our units back. Now again, another cycle. And we again go with the spreading creep. And eventually, while you're being attacked, obviously you can stop the creep spread and you can focus on something else. For example, again, here is the economy management. We want to have 16 out of 16 everywhere. Not too many units. We realize, okay, we're lacking some tech. Let's throw down everything. And, oh, there's an SCV here. Again, let's set up maybe a run-by. This run-by we're not gonna send in right away because it interrupts our cycle again. So we wait, we do this. And now we're like, okay, but now he just moved out. Let's not spread creep this time. Let's just do the run-by. Like, that kind of stuff you can change during the game. And that's what's so beautiful about the way you can do this. It's the way you prioritize things. No one can do everything at once, not even a Zerg. Or whoever, like, unless you're a bot. So prioritizing different things is very important. You can practice the things the way I showed it right here. You can also try practicing it in arcade games where you have multitasking trainers. You can learn everything slowly but surely. Just be sure to be accurate at first, and then eventually speed will come later. So you will see that like putting creep tumors like this slowly is better than trying to spread them fast and putting them like this. This is the good old nurture crew spread. Even though he's already retired, this is how he... The one thing that we always made fun of him for, because he was pretty much solid in every other department. Either way, that's just what I wanted to show you guys. If you have anything else to suggest for this series, you can let me know in the comments below. Also let me know if you guys enjoyed it or not. As I said before, I won't do this ZergAcademy stuff weekly, just whenever I feel like I have something to show you guys. And yeah, make sure to leave a like and subscribe and click the bell and do that other YouTube stuff. And see you guys in the next video. Bye bye everyone.